I am leaving Adobe. I've been using Adobe for quite a while now, about 6 months full time on this channel. I've been using Adobe Photoshop for years. I've been using Lightroom for years. I just realized recently that Adobe isn't for me, so I'm moving over to other programs. Okay, so Adobe's pricing is absolutely ridiculous. So it runs you about $50 a month just to use that software. That is super expensive and it's unreasonable. So the way Adobe works is they rent you the software and you pay a monthly fee of about $50, which is ridiculously expensive. And it comes out of your bank every single month you want to use the Adobe subscription. Look, I get it. Some creatives are making enough money in order to afford it. And some creators that aren't making that type of money are just pirating the software. I don't agree with piracy. If you want to use the software, you should pay for it. If you want to use the software, regardless of what the software is, pay for it. It's as simple as that. If you want to use Windows 10, can't afford it, use Linux. Find an alternative. The people who make the software still need to get paid, still need to feed their families, and it is a little bit expensive. I get it. Not everyone has the money to use the industry standards. And I get it, that sucks. But if you really want to make a legitimate way out of this, don't use pirated software. It is dishonest. And like, people get hacked this way. You're willingly putting unsigned software onto your computer. And it's not a good idea because you are putting yourself at risk. Okay, let's talk about some alternatives that I'm going to use. Photoshop is a big concern because I use GIMP with Darktable as my Photoshop and Lightroom alternative. It is really not the same. GIMP and Darktable do function really similar to Photoshop, and I've been using it quite a bit, but Darktable doesn't give you the control that Photoshop's developer does when you're going through Canon RAW images, or any RAW image in general. It's really not the same. And then things like the heal function works completely different, making the minor adjustments works differently. All of these works differently. If you're just using it to make thumbnails for YouTube, great, perfect, use GIMP. Don't use Photoshop. Like I'll fight you on that. That is something that if you're going to be using a software, don't use Photoshop. Use GIMP, because Photoshop really isn't as user friendly for thumbnails as GIMP is. But the problem is if you're using it for serious photography, like art-based photography, like I am, GIMP doesn't measure up to Photoshop. The color profiles, all of that, it just isn't there. And I'm honestly considering using Affinity. I've seen a little bit of how Affinity works and how it looks. It's not Photoshop, but it feels like Photoshop and it looks a little like Photoshop. So I'm going to try the trial, see how that goes, and then take it from there. But I'm not moving back to Photoshop. Like, if you're using Photoshop to draw or to do digital painting or so, the alternatives I do recommend is Krita. I've used Krita for the past 5 years, but Krita is honestly more suited to digital artists than Photoshop is. If you want to use it, it's free, great. So yeah, if you're using it for digital painting, move over to Krita. Okay, I want to talk about Premiere. I've been using Premiere as my only editing software for 6 months. I used Cyber Director before that, and before that I used Sony Vegas. Please note I used Cyber Director 17. I did not use Cyber Director 365 or whatever they call the online subscription. I used the one you could just buy and have as a software. And for Sony Vegas, I used Sony Vegas 14. So it is an old version of Sony Vegas that I got like dirt cheap on Steam. So please keep that in mind. Moving away from Premiere Pro is a bit difficult because the color correction inside of Premiere Pro was great. The audio correction of Premiere Pro was great. There are so many tutorials that I could learn, and I learned so much about the software that it's really rough to get going and like change software now. I wish I didn't have to move, but if it wasn't for that price, if the price was either lower or it was a once-off fee, even if it was a bit expensive, I would pay it and then not have to pay it again. But $50 a month is ridiculously expensive. So let's talk about what I'm moving over to. I'm thinking of moving over to DaVinci Resolve. I downloaded it, I tried it out a little bit. It's really good. It's a really nice software. I'm not on Mac, otherwise I would move over to Final Cut, but I'm using Windows. So DaVinci Resolve is a free alternative that a lot of people are using at the moment. It's really nice. It looks great for free program. It's made by the people that make the black cinema cameras, and it's used for industry grade color correction. There's not a lot of color correcting that I need to do on my videos, For the most part, I just need to make sure that I look okay and some scenes look okay. I'm not doing a massive professional movie, so I'm not sure how that's gonna affect my workflow. If I don't like it, I am gonna just move back to Cyber Director is great. I loved using it. I stopped because I wanted to move and try Premiere, and I needed Premiere for my video making course. But if I didn't have to, I wouldn't have moved in the first place. Cyber Director does what Premiere did with After Effects built in. Sure, it's not as fancy as After Effects, but it's really solid. It's a really solid program. You could do face tracking, you could do area tracking, and it's good. It's really good. And workout, I'm moving back to Cyber Director. Would I move back to Sony Vegas? No. I have Sony Vegas 14. It's like riding a dinosaur. It is really old. It is really rough to use. I have no intention of moving back there. You couldn't even move a picture around it in frame without fucking with its dimensions and its placement like that. And you couldn't just drag and drop it like you can with other software. You get to do this all manually. Sure, I get it. It's an old software and it's improved upon in later versions, but I'm not buying the latest version. I have software that I can use that I don't have to spend any money on, and I'll rather use that instead of struggling my ass off. Okay, let's talk about Illustrator. I don't use Adobe Illustrator, just nothing that I've bothered with. I use Krita, free to use, great, works really well with Wacom software. The only thing that you have to do is update your computer's drivers really often, because Krita updates with the drivers. So if you don't have the latest drivers, yikes, you might have to do an update. Not too big of an issue, just update your drivers. Another alternative that I do use is Procreate. I use Procreate on my iPad. I started using it about 3 years ago. I flip-flop between that and Krita. I like being able to be on the go with the iPad, but yeah, it's more up to preference than what I do recommend. Krita is nice because it's free. Procreate, you have to pay for it, and I know the price has gone up since I paid for it. I paid something like 80 bucks for it. 80 rand, so that's like dirt cheap. And I know it's more expensive now, but it's one of those things. If you want to use good software, sometimes you have to pay for it. Okay, and let's just go through the list of Adobe software and just list a bunch of alternatives that I did find online. Animate alternatives, you can animate in Krita, I think. You can animate in Procreate, so there is enough alternatives. For Illustrator, Krita, After Effects, for the most part, you can do a lot of what you do in After Effects right into Cyber Director. Adobe XD, you can use Sketch. I don't know what the fuck that is. For Lightroom, you can use Darktable. Adobe Fresco, you can use Procreate. Adobe Brush, you can just throw your fucking footage away. You don't want to ruin it with Adobe Brush. Adobe Dimension, you can use Blender. Adobe Dreamweaver. Okay, so look, I use the Dreamweaver. I don't like it. If you want to make a website, use a website template builder if you don't know how to code it. If you do know how to code it, you can code it in MS Studio. There's so many alternatives that you don't really need to use Dreamweaver anymore. And yeah, that's about it. If I'm being honest with you, the Adobe suite just reeks of late stage capitalism bullshit. There's so much good software there that's hidden behind this absolutely ridiculous paywall. And I understand why it's there, because the software is good. The software is good. But if you can't afford it, there isn't an alternative that Adobe provides. You can't buy a single fucking program from them. You have to get the suite, and the suite is ridiculous because you don't need all that software. Another thing that Adobe does do is probe around your computer far too much. It, like the update will run regardless of if you need it to run when you start your computer up. Sure, you can set this off, but the average person isn't going to go dig around Adobe settings to turn off the auto update or to make it so that it only opens the Creative Cloud software when you need it. If you're using it not as your primary software, like just an individual having it installed in his computer, you don't need that extra thing taking away processing power. It's a very invasive software. These alternatives is probably what I'm going to be changing to. And it's not a case of bashing Adobe, it's just a case of realizing that sometimes you have to make do without the best, and that does make you a better creator. 100%. Working with limitations and overcoming those limitations does make you a better, more versatile creator. Don't let anyone tell you that you need the latest and greatest software to make something that's good. You don't. You can use free. And that is something that I've been wrestling with for a long time. Do I want the best equipment, the best software, or do I want to buy what I need for me and work with what I have and do the best that I can? And that's something that everyone needs to take into consideration when they buy software. So yeah, I'm leaving Adobe. My videos might take a while to come out now, like the wait time might be just a little bit longer because I'm getting used to a new software. Thank you so much for watching. My next video is coming out relatively soon. I'm actually filming it after this, so if you want to catch that, just subscribe. Yeah, see you then. Bye.